right.
Wonderful. All right. Are we ready to get going, Chui?
I think we are.
Awesome. Wonderful. All right. Welcome, everybody. We are so glad to be here. We are so glad to be live with you. And we have so much jam-packed for today's conversation. Before we start, let's just do some super quick introductions. Chui, let us know who you are, and I'll do the same, and then we'll dive in.
You bet, Rachel. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. I appreciate you joining today. We want to make sure that this information that you're receiving here is going to be impactful through your job search. And then one of the most important things I've done in my career is going through over 350,000 resumes. So I have so much experience that I've learned from individuals' career in different sectors, subsectors, specialties. So as the Job Helpers, the CEO of the Job Helpers, we have built over 55,000 resumes in the past 10 years.
Amazing. Cool. Well, yeah, anything else you want to add before I dive in?
So I think we should go ahead and stop that music that's coming up. If our team can stop that music coming up, that'll be great. Thank you. And let's go ahead and get things started. We're going to be talking about transferable skills. We're going to be talking about how you can pivot from one industry to another or one role to another, kind of get to that next level if you're planning to do that. I wanted to introduce myself as someone who has gone through this process before. I've applied to hundreds of jobs at some point in my career where I've had numerous difficulties getting rejections, getting employers saying you're overqualified. So I've seen that firsthand. So as the Job Helpers, I started this company 10 years ago, understanding those pain points and the definite realities of a painful job search. So coming from that and building over 55,000 resumes is kind of an achievement itself. But I want to kind of make sure that you understand in today's world what kind of transferable skills are applicable. There's a lot of great ones that you can list out. So we're going to be focusing on that as well. But I want to have Rachel kind of introduce herself a little bit, and then her objective here and the company and everything that she does for her.
Yeah. So hello, everybody. My name is Rachel Serwetz, and I am the founder and CEO of Woken. And I'm a career coach. So over the last 6.5 years, I've helped hundreds of professionals through clarifying their direction, upskilling, doing all of their personal branding, job searching, networking, interviewing, the mindset, career pivots, you name it, staying accountable. It's all relevant. So we are going to dive into so many of these key topics today, but that's super quickly who I am. And
So let me ask you this, Rachel. I always wonder, what are transferable skills in your mind? What do you think they are?
Yeah. So this is a great question. I think people struggle a lot because it's like, basically, how do you understand what you've done and your value and how it can be applicable to something else? And I think people struggle a lot to envision, what that is, especially when we talk about a resume. There's so many ways to tailor it, and there's so many ways to say the same thing in different phrases, right? So I think we'll get to these, examples later on. But, an example in my mind is, if you're a teacher and you're thinking about you were in a classroom with students and you were grading papers, or were you, measuring performance and analyzing trends over the course of time, right? And so you could sort of say that same concept in different ways. You can look at, here's what I did, and it could be phrased differently with, words that kind of mean the same thing in a different context, right? So thinking about where can I make my skills applicable, and also in language, in words that are applicable to other roles, other industries, right? So it's, I think people struggle to figure out exactly how, to do that. And that's what we're going to talk about. But that's how I sort of think about it. That's how I define it.
And that's a great starting point, right? I mean, say if you're in an individual contributor level, the transferable skills that you acquire could be more specific to leadership type of roles. Like say, for instance, planning, execution, decision making, vision creation, reporting, directional support, certain processes, policies, technologies, methodologies. There's so many of those versatile skills and transferable skills that you can be using to your advantage. And then when, like Rachel said, when we're going through the resume writing process, we'll kind of walk you through how to kind of correctly add the right information there. But then at the same time, think of those skills that you're kind of everyday things that you're doing, like say working with people. Everyone is going to be working with a team. So when you're an individual contributor, you're working within a team. And when you're in leadership, you're managing a team. So those are things that you want to kind of think about as transferable skills. And then when you're thinking about people, think about internal, external stakeholders, because there's so many different variances of teams that you're going to be working with. Like say, for instance, cross-functional teams, matrix environments, global teams, outsourced teams, or national teams, or vendors, partners. So different entities would even come into play at a lot of times. And you're working with these different segments on a day-to-day basis. That means you're working with transferable skills. So let's go through some of the transferable skills, like say versatility. That means that you have the breadth and the depth, and you can plug those transferable skills as you go. Like say, for instance, people management. If you have indirectly managed people in an individual contributor role, like say, for instance, project management, one of the specialty elements that I talk to. So say if you're in senior level project management and trying to get into leadership, what you can do is think about those indirect reports that you've had. Think about the project budgets that you managed. Those elements will come into play.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I mean, Chui, what do you think about how narrow somebody should get, right? Because it's one thing to think about where your skills can be transferable. But a lot of times I see people trying to transfer their skills actually just to so many options. And I think it's good to be broad and open-minded at first. But, you know, if you were to see somebody who's like, okay, I can plug in my skills to so many different places, so many different directions. How do you think about that when somebody's trying to figure out where to apply their skills and how to clarify their path forward?
Great question. So think of it this way, right? I mean, when you're applying these transferable skills, if you show off as a generalist, your chances are not so great, right? So the reason why is generalists never get paid well. Specialists do. So think about a specialty. We can even think about, like, say, pharmaceutical rep, right? So those pharmaceutical rep or sales rep type of experience, say if you're going into IT as the next thing that you want, or med tech, medical technologies. Say if you're transferring those skills, that'll be easier for you to kind of think about, okay, what are the base foundational layer of sales acumen that I can bring to that other industry, right? Say, for instance, it could be solution selling. It could be B2B relationship building, or it could be a list of clients that you've been working with that you can bring it to this next company, right? Or other aspects like pipeline building, working with CRM systems like customer relationship management, something like a Salesforce. That's something that you can easily carry into a different industry. So think of those elements, not so much to the point where you're thinking, oh my gosh, I need to kind of create a resume for every job that I'm about to go into. Well, you can do that. However, my personal recommendation is kind of break it into maybe 3 different segments or specialties, or maybe 2 different segments and specialties, like say based off of the title, based off of the industries, or based off of pay, high, low number, or even location wise, so you can kind of correctly identify the positions up front. Because having that know is so important, because if you know what they're looking for, it's so much easier for you to deliver content that would be more appropriate for that audience. So either way, you could be using your transferable skill set to mimic these specific requirements. At the same time, you don't want to give them a 5-page document, because that's not okay. So adding too much would overqualify you naturally. A lot of people don't think of this. Oh, overqualification is a thing. Absolutely, it is a thing. Because if there's 500 people applying for these jobs, the employers are looking for ways to disqualify candidates. That's what they're doing. The applicant tracking system software programs are keyed in to scan for specific key terms. So if you give them a 5-page resume or a 3-page resume, that might be too much for them to read through right away, because the average time a recruiter or a hiring manager is spending is about 7 seconds today.
Exactly. And so I think this is where our expertise blends so perfectly, because, with your expertise in like resumes, and I'm over here with that focus on the career clarity, it's clear that, in order to sell yourself, you have to understand not just what you want, but what you're a fit for, so that your resume can shine and make it so obvious what you're a fit for. And to your point, that means not overqualifying yourself, but also not being that generalist, right? You have to, I think with transferable skills, if somebody is thinking about the reader of who is looking at their resume or who's looking at their LinkedIn profile or whatever it is they're looking at, the brand needs to be so clear. And so even within any one role, there's always a subset of multiple skills that are relevant. So you're always like sort of a generalist in some way, but if you're so all over the place, that's where it gets confusing and it's not going to sell you quickly. So that's kind of why we start talking about your direction and your fit, and do you really know where you're headed? Because then to identify and label those transferable skills, it's going to be so much easier to do it yourself, and thus for somebody else to also sort of not reciprocate, but to actually receive and perceive what you're trying to put out there, right? You want your story to be crystal clear, which means you've got to figure out that direction first, and then you can illuminate that on all of your materials.
That's exactly what it is. I mean, if we were to talk about in the standpoint of a resume, the resume ideally should have about less than 1,000 words. That's the average length that we recommend to our clients. 950 words, perfect. Anything less than 1,000 words. The reason why is because no one is going to read that much content nowadays. And also there's a system screening you out. So some systems could have even specifics saying that, okay, only accept clients or only accept candidates, that would have certain number of word count or count of words on their resume. So if you didn't get looked at because you have so many words, that wouldn't be a good situation for yourself. So if you're getting disqualified for a lot of jobs, this is an area that you can absolutely think about and condense that resume. If you have less than 10 years of experience, the average length for a resume is about 500 words or less, which is a 1-page document. That means you have to even condense that experience into specifics that they get to see right away. That would be more relevant to that specific audience that you're presenting. So think of it this way. I mean, when you're planning this job search of yours, ask yourself the right questions right away. Do I have transferable skills? More likely, the answer is yes. What are those transferable skills? Build out a list of them. And then what you could do is you could think about looking at job postings and then seeing what kind of transferable skills are in high demand. Like say, for an instance, digital marketing, or it could be AI based, or it could be based off of the latest technologies that they're coming out with, or it could be based off of something to the matter of emotional intelligence, or it could be based off of DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, or it could be based off of change management. So there could be a plethora of different things that they're looking for. And what you want to think about is, how did you achieve some of these specific tasks or actions or results or timelines to match those transferable skills, and then start discussing that information correctly.
Yeah, I think that's great. And the thing to be wary of too is that we are getting in a world where so many people are getting good at labeling their skills and putting these keywords into a resume. So I would say, to go above and beyond, make sure you're not just listing the keywords, but you're substantiating. So you have those, phrases or those words to get you through the ATS, but you're showing, what you did, how you did it, and the results. So go above and beyond to make sure it's relevant skills, but also you show how you actually exemplified that, and and making that clear. And I think there's different ways to format it also on a resume, where it's not just like these words are in there so you can pass ATS, but there's also like, can you make some clear labels of your 3 or 4 transferable skills at the top of your resume, and that way the first time you look at it, it's very clear that you're a digital marketer who does email marketing and SEO, and all of a sudden that's obvious. So think about the words that have to be there to pass ATS, but also visually how you portray it and represent it, so that when a human actually looks at it, you can really zoom in on the most important information. So it's both for the computer systems and for the humans to be able to digest this information.
Absolutely. And some of the this is a question I get a lot of times. A lot of people who are applying for jobs or looking for jobs, the job seekers themselves, ask me what are skills that I can use as transferable skills. You don't have to think too much. Think about active listening. Think about participation, accountability, adaptability to change, or you could think about culture fit, like change management, as I mentioned, or charisma, or clarity, or other skills like coachability, right? Or collaboration skills, cross-functional skills, or based off of communication itself, or community engagement skills. So all of those skills could come into play. And then also words like continuous improvement, continuous learning, and then also coordinating certain aspects, or problem solving, creative problem solving. And then also other aspects could be like crisis management, cultural awareness, customer focus, customer insight. There's so many transferable skills.
I have a question for you. Like, how important do you think on the resume is you're listing some, what I would define hard skills and soft skills?
Correct.
Right? So for the listeners out there, I would say a hard skill is more the customer management or budget management or any sort of really hard, function and responsibility. Whereas I think about soft skills as the active listening and problem solving and sort of how you work and your style and your strengths.
Correct.
Chui, from the resume perspective, how important are both of those? Because I feel like the soft skills are kind of hard to get across well. And I think a resume can really shine with, having numbers and metrics and results. But how important are you seeing it for those soft skill words to also be in there?
So soft skills are so important because think of it this way, okay? I talk to a lot of job seekers in IT. They naturally add a lot of technical skills, like they know Java, they know JSON, they have MongoDB or other things that they're doing, or it could be specific to technologies like React and others, C#. But when you first start, you do need the hard skills bit a little bit more to show the employers that and you have the know-how. But when you get to a higher level, as you move up the chain, more soft skills needs to be added onto your resume to mimic the certain level that you're at. Like say, for instance, people management, right? I mean, if you're a people leader in IT, how much of hard skills, how much of development are you doing every day? With your IT team? You don't do that. You manage a team that develops software, or you manage a project team, or you manage other team members to help them to get to the goals or the timelines or the deliverables. So that means the soft skills are more important at that point versus the hard skills itself. Yes, you do want to have that acumen. It's given that some things already at that point. So now it just is confirming that you do also have the soft skills to work with people, because working with people is when the soft skills come into play a lot of times, right? Soft skills meaning working with different entities, different people, different processes. So now the hard skills are getting complemented with the soft skills. So you do want to have that switch at some point out of your career, especially when you're going from an individual contributor position to a leadership position. You want to focus on the soft skill acumen a lot more, based off of people management, based off of certain type of, like say, executive level leadership discussions that you're having, or going to board meetings and presenting in front of a board. I mean, if you're C-suite, that's what you want to think about. Or a hard skill at that point would be something like a P&L management, right? But at the same time, you're working with people. You're probably not really looking at the P&L until you get it as a report.
Yeah, totally. And, this makes me think of something else that we were talking about with transferable skills. Like if somebody hasn't managed people, but they want to become that manager level, I think that's another place you can try to illuminate transferable experiences might be another way to think about it. So say you mentored a junior employee and then they ended up getting a promotion. You then were doing employee development to coach or train somebody for 12 months, and you would meet once a month, and all of a sudden, they reached the next level in their trajectory and their career path. That is you describing how to kind of manage somebody. Or maybe you were coaching this junior professional to resolve challenges and supported them, to train and onboard in their new role. So even if you did these things informally and you're trying to become a manager, try to illuminate essentially the concept of transferable skills is where have you kind of already done this, even though maybe you didn't think of yourself formally as a manager? Were you informally a mentor? And how can you illuminate the experiences or the parts of that are then similar to what it is you want to go do? So if you're trying to become a people manager, that's just one example, but that's the same concept of what you're thinking about with transferable skills. But all of this is predicated on, do you know where you want to go, right? Do you want to be a people manager, or which role do you want? And then knowing what you want to highlight is that much easier. But that's just another example of like trying to figure out, I want to be this manager, when and where have I sort of already done this mentorship thing? And that's a way to, that's a common example, I would say, where people are trying to leverage their experience to, be tasked with the management role.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what you're saying is 100% true. Because if you were to relive scenarios based off of people, processes, and systems, that's where the transferable skills for leadership would come in. Like say people, like Rachel said, if you mentored someone, like say if you indirectly helped another colleague who started at a junior level in sales, and then you help them, mentor them, you help them to kind of hit their numbers and then get the right script in, and then also help them with coach them on certain elements of sales or closing or certain like lead generation, whatever you're doing. And then you could use that as more of I indirectly help this person, or maybe 2-3 people that help this organization to get to that next level, maybe 3 years later down the road. So those things you don't want to miss out, because you have helped them to get to that level. And I've heard leaders say this a lot of times where they're like, okay, I did turnaround operations, but they don't know the term turnaround operations. I would, because I'm a resume writer, because I would know that that's a term that comes up a lot of times. But turnaround operations mean that, okay, you're going into an organization, maybe it needed that turnaround fairly quickly within 6 months to a year to get it back to more of a profit-making operation. Maybe you helped them to get there, and you started as an individual contributor, and then you moved up the chain. So you need to be able to explain that situation based off of specific processes, policies. What did you do? What kind of stakeholders did you work with? What kind of certain timelines were you able to meet certain deadlines or certain tasks or results? Did you meet those? Or if you haven't, like say for instance, you just started a role and then you're working to get to the next level, like say to a leadership or otherwise, you can use some of the goals, because everyone has goals. Every job has goals. You could be an art director, you have goals. You could be a scientist, you have goals. You could be a lab assistant, you have goals. You could be in sales, you have goals. So every job has goals, and every role will have timelines set up saying you'll be having one-on-ones with your supervisor. So dictate that information and save it somewhere so you're using that to your future as a future reference, because when you get to me and talk to me and say, okay, 10 years ago, I don't remember what I did, well, that's kind of limiting you from from adding the right, more rich content or value adding content to help them to comprehend what you're adding into a resume using the transferable skills. So you want to kind of keep track of what you're doing weekly, monthly, especially with your supervisor, because if they're saying, hey, good job, you've done a great job of bringing this much sales, or you've done a great job of managing these projects and getting to the timelines, you even meet deadlines, or you save this much in cost, or this much of process improvement happened throughout your time. You could show it in percentage improvements year over year, or maybe time savings, whatever that means. Even though it's maybe small, start notating everything, because even if it's small, you could say, 95% of increase from year to year. Then that'll be a conversational factor for an employer, because they want to know what 95% means year over year. So then when you get to that interview, it just makes it that much simpler for them to ask that question and then kind of continue that conversation forward, because they're interested in that.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people worry that their metrics are too small, but I always say no number is too small, because having a number, it shows so much more than being vague about like, oh, I improved this or I increased this. Like, tell me actually what happened. Did it become faster? Did you save X amount of time? And sometimes you might need to roughly estimate if you don't know the exact numbers, but as long as you can speak to it, I think putting some conservative estimations is okay, but I like to see as many numbers as humanly possible. So no, I think everything of what you're saying is so important. Chui, I'm wondering if you can kind of make something more specific for us when it comes to these keywords on the resume. What is the volume like? Like, if you just take us into the world of an ATS, right? And it's like, you see this job posting and it's got some important keywords. Is the system looking that you're saying that word multiple times, or like, how should we think about these phrases? And by the way, something else important that you said was the exact phrasing, right? If turnaround operations means something to you, but it doesn't mean something to somebody else, make sure that's another way to think about transferable skills, is making sure you're not using words that are just internal jargon. I read a lot of resumes and they have like phrases of what, that project was called internally. Try to translate what was that project into industry standard terms, so that you're equating like, what was this project and what is that actually called in the real world. So be very careful about internal jargon. And again, I think that's what transferable skills is all about. And it's a balance, because you still need it to be specific and make sense. And you don't want it to sound like it means nothing. But just, that's the art of like finding a way to be concise and yet specific and yet comprehensive. But tell us, with these keywords, like, how should somebody think about it? Like, they're looking at the job posting, there's however many important keywords. Is there a certain like volume of keywords that they need to hit, or how do you think about that?
Thank you. Thank you so much for kind of getting to this, because it's a two-part question, right? Two-part question where, okay, don't add specific jargon based off of the company itself, the acronyms. I've seen it happen a lot of times. When I talk to a lot of, say our customers, a lot of times we ask them questions of, can you elaborate this process? Or if you work for a larger company, you're going to see these acronyms and jargon a lot more, like the Amazons, the Microsofts, the Apples, the Googles. They have acronyms for everything, like our government. So, and what that really means is it might not be common knowledge, exactly what Rachel is saying. It might not be common knowledge for other employers or other hiring managers who are even in the industry. It might not be something that they've heard. So you want to translate that information or transfer this information correctly, and then discuss it based off of what they're looking for. So say, for instance, here's a good example. Say if you were deployed in the military for, say, over 15 years, you coming out of the military, and then adding that military lingo into a resume, and then sending it out to the companies, the corporate world, you think you're going to get really good results? Probably not. The reason why is because the military jargon or military lingo is specific to people in the military. And it could be Army, Navy, Air Force, whatever that you're in, or Navy SEALs or otherwise, right? So you could have its own lingo that you're using that might not really translate well in the corporate world. So you want to use corporate lingo instead, industry jargon instead, words like cross-functional team collaboration when you're saying working with multitude of different type of people. And then the second part of this answer is how many keywords to add, and then how many keywords to look at. And are these keywords, do I need to repeat them over and over again? No. The easy answer is no. If you have, like, say for an instance, customer relationship management, say, take a sales role, CRM. So how I would picture it is, okay, I want to write out customer relationship management and then CRM within parentheses. So that way, if the trigger word is customer relationship management, that'll get triggered by the ATS. And then CRM, if another job posting is looking for CRM, I'll have CRM listed on there to get captured there as well.
Okay,
so
but you can just say it once and you're good.
The system will recognize it. However, you do want to have a lot of keywords. This is what I'm getting at. You do have the luxury. If you have a 2-page document, you do have the luxury to add 950 words. That's a lot of words. You can use keywords for every sentence if you like. That means 35 sentences you get to add keywords to. So think of it as a breakdown. How many keywords do you want to add per sentence? Say 2 to 3, maybe that's 75 keywords or 80 keywords that you're adding in. This doesn't mean that you have to customize the resume for every job either. This is something that a lot of people have been told by recruiters or career coaches. As a resume writer, just imagine, we wouldn't have a business running if we were to customize the resume for every client that we get for every job, because these people are applying for hundreds of jobs sometimes. There's no way, right? So what we would do is we would ask you questions like, okay, tell us in broad strokes, what kind of titles, what kind of locations, what kind of salary expectations, and what industries you want to target. And we'll have one of our analysts go through all the job postings together to understand what specific job postings are out there. Out of LinkedIn, Indeed, Career Builder, ZipRecruiter, company websites, Glassdoor, Monster Ladders. By the way, there's ChatGPT nowadays. There's Google's Gemini. There's Microsoft Copilot. You can pick the jobs out of the search engines yourself, because that's what we're doing. We're pulling all these job postings out of search engines, job boards, company sites, recruiter channels, everywhere, and then pulling a record of all the job listing details like requirements, qualifications, criteria, and then using the applicant tracking system software program. The reason why we're using the applicant tracking system software program, Rachel, is because 93.7% of employers, medium to large sized, according to LinkedIn, is using ATS software. And then 99.5% of employers, Fortune 500 level, according to Coursera, is using ATS systems. So if you're getting that coveted, thanks for applying, but we've decided to go with someone else today or someone else, that message comes from the automated system. Sometimes you might even gotten responses in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. in the morning or on a Sunday when no one's in office, right? You know that. But that system is in place. So as soon as you apply, if you're getting a response as a rejection, watch out, because the applicant tracking system software program has something to do with it.
Yeah. And I love what you said. Like, I believe in a powerhouse resume, because I think, same as you, if you're changing your resume for every job posting, I just think it's exhausting and it takes a ton of time. And by the way, that time, not only should you master the ATS, but you should be thinking about networking. So if you're spending all day editing your resume, right, I believe in the powerhouse resume, meaning if you were to look at 20 target job postings, take all the keywords and make sure that one resume has it all. So I think we're on the same page there. I actually see some questions in the comments, so I'm going to read those out and we could start talking about some of those. So we have a question that says, will adding specific transferable skills to my resume based on the job that I'm applying give me more chances of an interview? So short answer is yes. I mean, we want you to pass the ATS system, the keywords that's helping you to pass that first round, to get a response, to have what they're looking for. But, Chui, I'm curious your thoughts, because I know you've told us the percentages of how many people get the ding and how many people pass the first round. And so, even with all the right keywords, sometimes it's not always enough. So we do want you to have these best practices, but you do also want to network, and you want to meet with hiring managers and recruiters, and you want to, still be a human in the process. So we're not saying that anything is foolproof, but of course, these are the tips you should keep in mind if you're going to be working on your resume.
Absolutely. And think of it this way. I mean, if you can add 35 sentences to 2 pages worth of content, at least 15 or 20 of them needs to have qualitative, quantitative information. The numbers we were talking about, the reason why is because of the credibility factor. If I came to you and said, okay, I'm a resume writer, I can write your resume, you might say, okay, I'll think about it. But if I came to you and said, my company has written over 55,000 resumes, and we give you 4 interviews for every 10 jobs type of guarantee, now you're going to look at me differently, because now I said something that got your attention, and then you're now thinking, okay, if these guys can get 40% of responses, I'm in, I want that, right? So that's what the employers are thinking as well. Numbers are credible. Use as many as you can. Like Rachel said, there are no small numbers that you don't have to list out. You can discuss all of that detail on your resume, but make sure that you're not just adding numbers alone without the specifics. Like, say, I've seen this on sales resumes a lot of times saying met 95% or 110% quota. What does that mean?
And what was the quota, and how long did that take?
Yeah.
And did you meet it quarter over quarter or just once? And you want to go deeper. And honestly, what we haven't really said yet is, if you haven't already had someone else have a fresh pair of eyes on your resume, I mean, that's kind of the answer, because what Chui and I are saying is, like, these questions we might think of that you may not. And so when we read that you met the quota, we're going to be here and we're going to beg those details out of you of, like, all right, and what does that mean? And what was the quota? And, and so just simply having a fresh pair of eyes, it could be a mentor, a peer, a coach, whoever it may be, because there's elements of, like, what are those obvious critical components that are missing in your bullets that just simply a person reading it is needing to know. So that's kind of a very quick win that anyone can take advantage of. I do see another comment that it says, I have heard the matching too close, like, to the keywords, if you were to match 100%, it's suspicious. Any thoughts on this? I'm curious your thoughts, but I would say for me, I mean, I agree. Like, you cannot make it look like ChatGPT just wrote your resume or wrote your cover letter. Like, I like to use AI or even just leverage the keywords as ideas. And these are important things to incorporate. But the beauty about it is there's still a phrase and a sentence that is something that you did. So yes, you have to fill in the gaps. Those keywords are a component, but yes, do not make it from, like, a robot wrote this. It has to make sense to you. You have to be able to speak to it, and you're going to have other details, because if it's truly robotic, like, it wouldn't have been from your personal experience. If you were there meeting the quota in a team of 5 people, or you led the team to meet the quota, and what was the quota, like, we are humans in the end of the day. So explaining your experience has to be personalized, because you were there. What was the situation? What was the size of the team? Was it B2B clients? Like, these are details that only you know. So you really can't copy and paste it verbatim. And if you do, I mean, I actually agree with this comment that it is going to look suspicious. So you want to find the balance of, like, yes, there's a key word, which is a skill that has to be there in your resume, but all the other components were from you and your experience, and what did you prove, and what results did you drive. And so still have those special elements that we can get to know who you are as a person, right? Chui, what do you think about matching?
Great question. Yeah, thank you so much. And Rachel, you're hitting the nail on the head there. The reason why, I mean, Chris, thank you for the question. First of all, the answer is, I mean, you can get up to 100%, but if you can prove it to them that you do have keywords and the transferable experience, and then discussing qualitative, quantitative details, great, they'll take it. However, if you were to just copy and paste the job posting to a white space on your resume and then try to cheat the system, it wouldn't work. Because a lot of times what happens is these copying and pasting these specific keywords, what will end up happening is, what if the employer prints off your resume? They want to see it up close, right? What if it started printing the white space information as well, the printer itself? You never know. And then also it could be other things, like they might copy and paste this information into their own ATS, applicant tracking system software database, that they have you as a candidate in their pool of candidates. So if you were to copy and paste keywords or the exact job posting into your resume, that'll create an issue, because that
also, if it's white text and you highlight that text, you'll see it also.
Exactly.
So this is, I mean, look, this is just like the theme of life. Like if you're really trying to get around it, like someone is going to find out about that. So, you know, yes, we have to figure out how to beat these systems. And yes, it feels like there's limitations, but we're here to educate you on the tips that you can take advantage of in an effective and authentic way. And then, yeah, you've got to still make the resume go like scream off the paper. Your metrics are going to speak for itself. If you do upskilling to really, you know, make yourself stand out, or you record a video of yourself, or you network to get your foot in the door, there's so many things you're still going to do to stand out. The resume is the baseline and it's important, but it's, you know, it's not worth cheating the system, to Chui's point. And he's the expert here. Like truly, if you've seen hundreds of thousands of resumes at this point, and he's still saying that there's other ways to like beat the system in the way, you know, if things feel unfair, there's still ways to master it without like having to do things that feel icky, you know?
Right. And if you do, like say, okay, however, there are certain times that you want to use white spacing to your advantage. Here's an example of this. Microsoft Word, right? Comes up a lot of times, or PowerPoint or something that just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It just wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. So you can add it to the white space, but I would say maybe technical skills with it. So that way you're not just, even if they copy and paste it, oh, that maybe they made a mistake or something to that matter, versus just, you know, copying and pasting job posting details. I would not do that. The only way, like say for instance, if you're 90% match and for you to become that 100%, they're just adding something like a Microsoft Word. It's just given, right? So Microsoft is something that they might ask for. So there's no place to add that other than in a place like that. So you can consider that at that point, but I wouldn't go to the extreme of adding so many of those white space content, because that might just start to come across as more of a, you're trying to cheat the system. So if they were to find out, that'll be a complete disaster.
But not even the white space, like in the bullets, sometimes people could be like matching or like copy pasting from the job posting. I mean, even then there's a fine line of like, you don't really need the entire bullet from the job posting. You need the most important keywords, like what Chui was saying, which is CRM or vendor management, or like these like buzzy, jargony words. So you have to understand what are the important words, but you don't need to copy paste things in a way that doesn't really look real. I see some other great questions in here. Let's see. How can I highlight my transferable skills in a cover letter without repeating my resume? I think in the cover letter, there's a lot of different ways to do it. You can tell some stories, right? You have a little more space to add details that didn't fit in the resume. So you can try to add newer, different words or phrases, or, you know, context. For example, you might have had to do something in 3 months' time and you reported to the CEO and it was a really fast turnaround and it was an issue and you sort of, you know, saved the day or whatever. Like, this is a story that is not going to fit in the resume. So you can do stories, you can outline and sort of synthesize your skills. I think context is what can really come through in the cover letter. And really there's just more space, you know, your strengths, your traits, what makes you stand out, what makes you effective, and really just having some past stories. But yeah, I would think about trying exactly what you said, is not repeating yourself and finding what are the things I can use and include that add value, that show my fit, that show my interest, and also show I've done my research about this company. That all being said, I would come up with a great cover letter template and kind of try to customize it to each application without spending days on it, you know? So it's the same idea as the resume. Is like, get a great, strong example ready, and then like just tweak it slightly, you know, for each one, because it's, I don't want to say it's not worth your time, but like get a strong one. And then, you know, there's a lot more to focus on in your job search beyond that.
So, and to add to what Rachel said, it needs to be personalized, right? So the resume needs to be more subjective, meaning you're not saying I, myself, and me. Richard is a great person in the third person. You're not writing the resume. If your name is Richard and writing about yourself and then talking about yourself in the third person, it's definitely not a good way to reflect your experience on a resume. So I myself saying I'm passionate. I mean, those, you can make the cover letter more personalized by saying I, myself, and me. And then also whatever keywords that you can fit, like say, for instance, if you have 2 or 3 different pairs of keywords that are very similar to each other, you can bring maybe 1 or 2 into the cover letter, like say customer success or customer portfolio management, or whatever if it's the same thing, like customer success journey mapping, or all
You're
of those.
using the synonyms, right? Because in the resume, there's only so much space. So it's like,
Exactly.
what is the same phrase that I can say in a different way?
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard from recruiters, they will sometimes resort to the cover letter if there's multiple candidates, you know, and they need to kind of go that step deeper. If you have something unique about you, if you have a unique story, anything that, you know, this is your space that you know, someone may very well read it. So it's your place to kind of go above and beyond if you can. But again, I wouldn't overspend a ton of time on it. There's a lot of amazing questions actually in the chat right now. So I want to get to some of those. I'm going to try to hit some of these really quickly, and then Chui, like, let me know, just so that we can make sure to acknowledge people's questions here. Is it better to add specific details like JIRA to the resume, or is it okay to add to the cover letter? I would add that to the resume. Like something like JIRA is probably very critical to your job, if I had to guess, if you're in a technical role. So any critical skills must be on the resume. Cover letter should be a secondary, complementary. It can enhance, it can go above and beyond, but do not leave critical information off the resume. And then, you know, we see another question here about, can transferable skills make up for a lack of direct experience? So I think transferable skills can be really helpful for pivoting. But if you're trying to pivot into something, you really want to network with people who are in those roles. And there's a separation between pivoting into a role versus pivoting into a new industry. And so really, in the end of the day, they're hiring you for a role. Your industry exposure and your industry knowledge is more or less important based on the role, right? So like in sales, like they might need to see that you've done B2B sales versus direct to consumer sales. But in some roles more than other, the industry is more or less important. But if you're trying to pivot, absolutely highlight transferable skills, but network to make sure you know who they really look for, how do people pivot into this role, and maybe there's an interim step you can take, because pivoting is a much bigger conversation, and the resume can definitely help you. You could even do upskilling to show that you're pushing towards your pivot. But just make sure you have the behind the scenes understanding and don't only rely on your documents, although they can help brand you for a pivot.
You bet. So to add to what Rachel said here, Dan, thank you for the question. Thank you for the question. Menuka, Sandamita, Emily, Ash, Eddie, thank you. I appreciate all the questions here. So the easy answer is yes, JIRA needs to be a specific skill that's listed on the resume. The reason why is because cover letters are only getting looked at by 10% or less of hiring managers initially. However, the cover letter is important because that's another place for you to add keywords, because you get 1,000 words on the resume if you have over 10 years of experience, plus another 350 words for the cover letter. Now think in those lines. Now you could add 1,350 keywords, 1,350 keywords, or something similar to that with the experience. I mean, you're not going to add 1,350, but just say, you know, you can have at least half of it as keywords that you could be using. So JIRA definitely needs to be on the resume. And then can transferable skills make up for the lack of direct experience in the field? Absolutely yes, because some of those transferable skills could come into play if, I would say, it's more of a option B type of situation where if you don't have the specific, like say leadership, right? If you don't have direct leadership experience, you can use indirect experience, like say working within projects, managing project budgets, or specifics that you can bring in, even though you don't have the direct management experience of people doing one-on-ones or hiring people or motivating them or helping them get to their goals. You might have been doing it indirectly. So use that transferable skill set to and acknowledge it, saying that I do have experience indirectly managing people. That's not a false statement there. So, and then how do I demonstrate transferable skills in a job interview? I mean, that's a wonderful question. Rachel, you want to take this?
Yeah, and I see these are so great that we're getting so many comments. Yeah, so in terms of an interview, you want to do as much prep as you can, and you want to practice out loud. Of course, looking at the job posting, and then what you can actually do is really take all of the key bullets on a job posting and just turn them into the question of, tell me about a time you, and practice those out loud. So you can use the STAR method, which is situation, task, action, result, and practice out loud how to tell stories that are directly relevant to those job requirements. That's kind of the quick answer to your question, but there's so much more to think about with interviewing. But as many stories that you can really tell about literally having done the thing that they're looking for in a nutshell. It sounds simple, but that stuff takes prep, right? So write down your stories, practice them out loud, and really think of them ahead of time. I always think about stories like tools in your toolbox, and you're just in the moment saying, which one of these am I going to pull out right now, like which story is most relevant to their question. But having practiced so many stories, you're going to feel like you have options. And then you're going to give them that most directly relevant example, but highlighting where and when you've done this before is really what you want to showcase.
Absolutely. And to add to that, I mean, think of when you're interviewing for positions, think of the transferable skill set and think about the questions they're about to ask. They'll be asking questions in the specific, like specialty questions, like say if it's project management or IT related, they'll be having those technical questions. But you'll also have a behavioral type of questions, probing questions, hypothetical questions, situational questions, leadership questions. So if you were to kind of put a list together for yourself up front, because practice makes you perfect on an interview, right? So what you want to do is to kind of really, if you're rusty on the interviews, kind of start practicing now on those specific, like what Rachel said, situation, task, action, results, the STAR technique, which is used by Amazon and many other companies around the world, to kind of get more refined of an answer out of your career. And then you can even pivot to certain aspects. Like you don't have to talk about this one single individual scenario. You could talk about 2 to 3 scenarios, or you can bring up maybe one scenario and explain it really well based off of, okay, here are the stakeholders who are involved. Here's the process that I followed. Here's the result and the outcome afterwards. Like say, especially with a problem solving question, that's what you need to do. And then also the aftermath, meaning the follow-up that you've done. It's so more important to discuss that and then bring up the examples, because a lot of times when I go into doing interview coaching, Rachel, what has happened is a lot of our customers are just giving answers based on surface level, just like what they have on the resume. They're just talking about what they've done versus what they have achieved. So that's a real concern, because now if you're not showing achievements and showing them that you're adding value to their operation by showcasing historical evidence, you might not stand a chance. So you could use those transferable skills in your advantage, where you could discuss and pivot into, hey, here's what I have done that would mimic that specific experience in the past.
Right.
And
absolutely. Yeah.
And John had a question. John, thank you for the question. What if you graduated from NDSU, North Dakota State? Well, I'm my alma mater there, so great. If you didn't graduate at NDSU and did not get into a career field, but had to figure out on the go without the benefit of a network. So, I mean, it all depends on what you would like to do, what your passions are, and what you're really good at. Like say, for instance, I mean, if you are in the agriculture field, or if you're in biosciences, or if you're in pharmaceuticals, or if you're in any of the specialties that you started with. Because when you started at NDSU, maybe you more so had an idea or maybe a general major, but whatever you did, NDSU might have helped you to kind of figure out, hey, here are some of the courses that you can take and figure out what you're good at, right? So whatever you're good at is where you want to focus. Whatever you're really passionate about are the things that you want to think about. Because when the passion meets specialty, it's beautiful.
Yes, I love that. And there's one other question about could a transferable skill hurt you? So if you're trying to apply to an IT role, but you have leadership as a skill, will it hurt your chances? I think that's an interesting question. I think if you're just listing the word leadership, it never hurts. Even as an IC, they want to show that you're taking initiative. But I think if your whole resume if you take a zoom out and you're getting a perspective, like this is really a manager, this is really a leader, if you're giving that sort of perception and that brand, but you're applying to something lower level, that's where I would see like a concern. So I don't think just saying like leadership is ever bad. It's always like a good thing to show. But I think you want to look at like, what is the ultimate holistic brand vibe that I'm getting when I look at this whole resume, and what level tenure is this person? And then if they're applying to something more junior, is that going to be confusing. I realize we just have another minute or two here, so I want to wrap up really quickly. And for all of you that have questions and comments, please get in touch with both of us. We will continue to answer these offline. DM us, connect with us on LinkedIn. But yeah, just to wrap up, thank you all for being here. We'll come back and do this again because it sounds like people were enjoying it. But yeah, I run a career coaching company. So we help people with clarifying their direction, determining upskilling opportunities, improving all of your personal branding, job searching, networking, pivoting, interviewing, your mindset, your accountability, all of these important topics. And we support you through that. So please reach out. If you want any support at iamwoken.com or connect with me on LinkedIn. And I hope this was helpful. And Chui, let us know where to find you.
You bet. And absolutely. If you are in need of career coaching, more in a level where you need to have a deep dive understanding out of your career to kind of really figure out the specifics and really understand your passions, really understand where you want to head or where your head's at, or maybe looking at the 10,000 foot view. I mean, Rachel would be your gal to go to. She is wonderful. We wanted to include her here today because there's so much of synergy here, and we work together a lot of times in more of a professional level here. So for the job helper side, I mean, we as a service, we have written over 55,000 resumes. We have built a resume for every continent so far. So when I first started, I applied to 850 jobs while I was working at the Microsoft campus. I got 4 interviews and I figured something was really wrong. I was getting lots of rejections. I was working at a place where I was just trying to figure out what I was kind of doing wrong. At the same time, I had an MBA degree, so that was overqualifying me slightly. So my career really is kind of the start of the job helpers, where now my friends got involved, said, okay, you're doing something right. You're at the Microsoft campus. You should be putting something right on your resume. Can you help me? So it just ended up in a situation where now we have built over 55,000 resumes for people. We guarantee 4 interviews for every 10 jobs. We have a 5 business day process. So it's all based on your pace and the timing. And then also what we can easily do is to kind of ask you some questions, go through the job postings ourselves. We have analysts in our team who can do an excellent job of pulling all the data records to one place, running it through the ATS system the employers are using, and then coming back with a specific, say, okay, these are the specifics that we need to talk about instead of what you have, or you have discussed this, let's elaborate, or you haven't discussed it, why not? Was it because you didn't have the experience, or was it because you didn't think about it, or you didn't have enough space on the resume? So we would have those initial discussions with you before building the content, so we can be accountable. Because if you're not getting 4 interviews for every 10 jobs you're applying to in the future, after the content is built in 5 business days, what we have to do is we are accountable to rework the content up to 5 times a month until you land an opportunity in the future. So until you land a job opportunity, we'll be continuously working with you until then. So it's a win-win situation for you. You're not just subscribing to a service where, oh, you're building the resume, see you later. Instead, it's more accountable to help you throughout your journey. And then with people like Rachel, experts in the field, we can interject her anytime during our process as well and have you kind of talk to her, get her mind, get the mindset all kind of in the right place at the right time, right? So that's kind of what Rachel is specializing in. So we would love to help and collaborate there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone. And we will see you soon.
Thank you so much, everyone. Take care and have a blessed day.